Welcome back to the Twinspires Racing Roundtable. I'm Ashley Anderson, back with James Scully and Vance Hanson to look over some big topics in horse racing from the weekend, including the Grade 2 Remsen and Demoiselle at Aqueduct, the final time we were going to have those races at Aqueduct, as well as the Cigar Mile. We're going to look at those three races, and to round out the show, with the holiday season here, we're going to have a fun question to talk about some big racing events around the world. So you'll see when we get there. But let's start off with the road to the Kentucky Derby and the Oaks. They made their next stops at Aqueduct over the weekend for the Grade 2 Remsen and Demoiselle, both at 1 1/8 of a mile. James, what were your takeaways from those races? We had Paladin win the Remsen and Zany win the Demoiselle.
Well, I think Zany's more advanced in her maturity right now than Paladin is, and she was certainly a more impressive winner and ran a little bit faster. For the fractions, and both the Remsen and Demoiselle were pretty similar, and she just came home quicker than her male counterpart did. But she's also a filly, like I said, who first time out at Gulfstream in a 6.5 furlong sprint, she wins by 6.5 length and seemingly brilliant fashion, and was bet down to odds on off of it. And boy, oh boy, did she live up to her favoritism. And even, the billing in making her such a strong favorite on the morning line like David Aragorna did. She's a filly that's out of an uncle. She's by American Pharoah, which doesn't naturally just scream. There's a lot of sprinter, miler types by American Pharoah. But she's out of an Uncle Mo mare, the Mo Green, who won the 1.125 Top Flight, was a really good router. So she's getting plenty of stamina from her female family, as well as being by a Triple Crown winning sire. And I just thought she just looked sensational. She is a big time 3-year-old filly prospect for Todd Pletcher, who has trained a whole bunch of 3-year-old filly champions in his career. Paladin, like I said, he wasn't as fast. He wasn't as eye-catching as Zany. But I think this is the first time he's finished first. I mean, he got out-finished in his debut by Renegade. I thought it was a questionable DQ that day. But he definitely progressed, I thought, from that debut performance here in the Remsen. I like the tactical ability he showed to get positioning just off the front runners. Save ground, stalking in like third or fourth during the opening stages, and then make this wide move to the lead, into the stretch like Paladin did. I think it says a lot for him as a promising sort. The runner-up, Renegade, ran a really good race as well, and could be a nice 3-year-old also. So while it wasn't the most impressive performance time-wise, I still think Paladin has a lot going for him moving forward for Chad Brown off of this Remsen. And the Remsen has had a big impact upon the Triple Crown. It's produced a pair of horses that have won the Belmont in the last 5 years, as well as horses like Zandon and Sierra Leone, who finished third and second, respectively, in the Kentucky Derby.
Vance, what were your thoughts on the Demoiselle and the Remsen?
Well, I can't disagree too much with what James said. I think he hit the nail on the head for both races. And Zany, as James said, is trained by Todd Pletcher. He's used this race as a stepping stone for some Kentucky Oaks fillies in the recent past, like Malathot and Nest, who didn't win the Oaks but still wound up being 3-year-old champion. She looks like the real deal coming out of this race. Showed a little bit of greenness in the stretch, but this was only her second lifetime start. I think she's going to improve quite a bit over the winter and in the spring. And the fact that she did run faster than the boys on this particular afternoon, I think, says a lot about her quality. Paladin was a horse I liked going into the Remsen. He stepped up big time, I thought, despite running slower than the fillies. As James said, showed good positional speed, stalked on the inside, took some dirt in his face, and then swung out and came in with a really nice run at the end. So going into this race, Paladin was there's been a lot of comparisons between him and Sierra Leone, who also entered the Remsen off of a maiden win at Aqueduct. They're both by Gun Runner. I think in Paladin's favor, he might not be as fast as Sierra Leone was at this stage, but at least he shows a a bit better, more tactical foot, and I think that's going to serve him well as he stretches out and continues to race over the winter. So, Paladin, despite running slower than Zany, I think still looks to me like a big time Derby contender, and I look forward to seeing how well he quickens over the winter.
Vance, I thought you were always going to mention about how you really liked his name, also being a fan of the old Western show. Isn't that right?
Yeah, so Paladin was the lead character in Have Gun Will Travel, both the radio and television series. So, and since he's by Gunrunner, I thought that was a terrific name Coolmore has put out on this colt.
Okay, I was wondering what the origin of the name was. I wasn't quite sure, so that answers the question. I think, James, I know we were talking about this on the jury. We were trying to at least beat Paladin. It wasn't that we didn't respect him coming into the race, but it was a big field. So it looked like there were a lot of good horses in here that could have potentially gotten the better of Paladin. Renegade was one that I thought maybe was going to improve off the last performance, having at least crossed the wire first, but was DQ'd obviously. But Courting too was kind of that big name for Todd Pletcher, who's well bred and ended up finishing fourth, and I think had a slightly troubled trip. So maybe in the future we'll see better. But with Paladin, that was it was one of the slowest times on the Remsen recently. I think final time was slowest since Mo Donegal in 2021. So Mo Donegal ran a 153.61 and Paladin ran, it was a 150.97, I want to say. The fact that was slower than Zany, a little concerning, but Chad Brown also noted that Paladin lost a front shoe somewhere in the race, and he also had a cut on one of his pasterns. So I don't know, take that for what it is, but I guess you could say that maybe he could have had an even better performance. But I thought Renegade still, that's a horse I'm going to keep my eye on. Had a little bit wider of a trip than Paladin. Obviously, Paladin had an inside post to his advantage there. And then Zany, I thought we came in thinking the field was maybe going to be a little bit weak, but interestingly, on Brisnet past performances, that race rating for Zany for this race came back a 115, which was better than the Remsen, which was a 113. So technically, according to Brisnet, Zany faced a better field and then had a much better class rating too, compared to what Paladin got. But Zany had a 99 Brisnet speed figure, the top of any 2-year-old this past weekend, and then Paladin was right underneath at a 98. So I think coming into it, I was expecting to be less impressed from the Demoiselle than I would be from the Remsen, but I think Zany is one we should keep an eye out for, and maybe will be the next in a line of Todd Pletcher winners of this race that go on to very illustrious careers.
Hey, and Ashley, as you mentioned at the beginning of the segment, this is the last running for both races at Aqueduct. They'll be run around one turn at Belmont Park starting next year, and it'll be interesting to see whether the Remsen and Demoiselle will become more predictive of Derby and Oak success being one turn races or not, or if they don't do as well going forward. And I even wouldn't put it beyond the New York Racing Association to maybe cut the distance of both of these races and make them 1.116 events. I think they serve a great niche being 1.125 races, the longest graded stakes for 2-year-olds in the country. But, it depends on whether the horsemen want to run 1.125 in late November, early December, I should say, going forward. I could see Naira being flexible with these two races in the future.
With the Colts facing the 1.25 Derby, there is still I think some viability. Perhaps the Remsen being a non-furlong race, but the Demoiselle, I agree completely with Vance's sentiments towards where they'll take a hard look at that distance of that race, and they may just keep them the same distance and cut them both back. Because Pletcher said it after the race. They were asking him about Zany's affinity for the non-furlong distance, and he was like, yeah, I mean, she showed it, but she won't be running non-furlongs again for a long time, until the Oaks at the earliest, because they're just not running non-furlong races for 3-year-old fillies until you get to the Kentucky Oaks. I know they do it at they'll run the Gazelle or whatever at Aqueduct, but that's a kind of race that could be cut back as well when Belmont takes over next year.
Well, aside from the Remsen and the Demoiselle having their final runs at Aqueduct, we also had the Grade 2 Cigar Mile won by Bishop's Bay. who now is pointed toward the Saudi Cup in February, potentially, which would be a one-turn, 9 furlong race. Let's see, Vance, do you buy or sell his chances in the Saudi Cup running that one-turn, 1.125 miles?
I think he's a very interesting candidate. He's only run one bad race in his career. That was the Forgo over the summer at Saratoga, and that was after a stumbling start. Kind of ran out of gas in the final stages and finished sixth, I believe. But other than that, he's been first, second, third in every single one of his 13 some races in his career. And he showed a lot of guts to wear down front runner Mika in this spot. Track was kind of favoring speed a little bit, I suppose, on Saturdays. So Bishop's Bay had to, like I said, really dig in to get up for the win in this race. And that improved his record at Aqueduct to 3 for 3. So he is kind of a creature of Aqueduct. He has run well at other tracks, though. He's won at run well at Monmouth Park and did well at Belmont Park before that track closed for refurbishment. And as far as the distance stretching out to 1.125 miles around one turn, Bishop's Bay just has one race in his record going 1.125 miles around one turn, but it was a really good effort in the Peter Pan Stakes back in 2023, where he lost just by a neck to Arcangelo, who went on to win the Belmont Stakes and was named 3-year-old champion. So Bishop's Bay does have that quality class behind him going into the Saudi Cup. What he doesn't have, he doesn't have a whole lot of more upside, I think. You know, he's going to be 6 years old at the start of the new year, and trainer Brad Cox has another interesting horse called Disco Time, who I think might also show up in the Saudi Cup. He's going to be newly turned 4-year-old with a lot more upside than Bishop's Bay. So I'm not counting Bishop's Bay out, but he's going to have some serious company, I think, even from his own stablemate.
James, buy or sell?
Well, I'm going to sell him based upon those previous efforts. Because in that Peter Pan that Vance referenced, I mean, he went like almost 49 for the opening half and 113 and change, and that was a pretty moderate pace. And he was on the front end, just able to save a lot. And this Saudi Cup will probably have a big field and have a much more legitimate pace. But I will, first off, about Bishop's Bay, I give Brad Cox credit for getting him really good right now. His career, like Vance said, he's a lightly raced 5-year-old. He's only run 13 times. His career has been marred by like some interruptions. That happened to him this season as well. But the fact is, he's won 6 of his last 7 starts. And the lone setback, he stumbled out of the gate from post 2, and that really hurt him. I mean, to me, he had a viable excuse, missing the break in the 7 furlong Forgo. So his last 2 efforts, wins in the 49er on November 2nd, came back 5 weeks later, wins the Cigar Mile on Saturday, and he got good numbers for those performances. So he's really going good now. The one thing I will say, I've seen horses in the past add new dimensions to their resume when they get older, when they start getting like races under their belt. And I'm not saying that Bishop's Bay doesn't have the potential, possibly as a 6-year-old, to get 1.125 miles more effectively than he has in the past. But based on what I've seen, I think he should be aiming for races that are between 7 furlongs and 1.16 miles, because he's a miler and has been a miler, and he comes off 2 real big efforts at a mile.
Well, you mentioned Disco Time, Vance, and I just pulled up the numbers on this horse because he's 5 for 5, and he has 2 wins at 1.16 miles, one of them very dominant in the St. Louis Derby 2-back. And I feel like, Brad Cox having 2 that could be in the Saudi Cup. I think that Disco Time right now, just as far as the stamina he's shown and how he's been able to win dominantly, maybe he does bring a little bit more upside. But Bishop's Bay had a career best 102 Brisnet speed figure. Mika was loose on the lead, and Bishop's Bay was able to, in the stretch, overtake Mika and win by a quarter length, draw away to win by a quarter length. So, he is an interesting contender in the Saudi Cup, but also the question is, are we going to have Forever Young coming back? He won the race last year. How difficult is the field going to be? I know Nisos was listed as a potential runner, but he could also, I'm not sure if he's going to go to the Pegasus World Cup or go to, I don't know if I would rate top contender. I think what he's shown, and you mentioned the consistency too, Vance and James, with the Forgo being the only real draw line through it. I don't know if I'd rate him in the top of the top, but I think, at least respectable in the top 5 contenders, but not number
It,
1. I think he needs
I
to
think
show
you're
me
right
more.
about the depth of the field right now. I mean, Baffert 100% is running him, barring some physical reason for not running him. I mean, he's talked about how he's looking forward to that race. Niso's just earned the first grade one of his career. He could run in the Malibu as well, but it might be a situation where he goes Pegasus, Saudi Cup. We'll see what they're thinking. Um, and Forever Young's definitely going to target a repeat win as well. He's won there 2 years in a row. He won the Saudi Derby and the Saudi Cup. The real thing about Forever Young next year is he might not be targeting the Breeders' Cup Classic at Keeneland, but he is going to campaign for some races that his trainers mentioned.
Well, the way Forever Young won the Breeders' Cup Classic this year, I would have serious doubts with Bishop's Bay being able to beat Forever Young in the matchup in the Saudi Cup. If you're going to have, Forever Young up close like Bishop's Bay likes to be normally, so I just think Forever Young would be a step above right now from what I'm
Yeah, I
seeing.
agree, 100%. Yeah.
I agree with that too, but I recall the Dubai World Cup when Forever Young ran into a horse named Hit Show and didn't do
Right.
so.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
But I
Brad
know
Pitt's
those were
horse.
extenuating
Yeah.
circumstances for Forever Young and left it all on the track in Saudi Arabia a month beforehand. So
Yeah. Well, to close out, well, I think we're going to be talking a little bit more Pegasus World Cup here, but to close out, with it being the holiday season, kind of a lighthearted topic, might be some help if you're looking for a nice, big, grand gesture for a significant other, friend, or family member this holiday season. We're going to look at some major racing events that we've never attended, but would love to have, say, for a Christmas gift this year. If someone wanted to be generous and give us tickets to one of these racing events, kind of our bucket list items. James, I'll start with you. Is there one racing event or a racetrack around the world that you haven't attended that you would love to attend, and maybe if you were granted a nice gift this year, would want to receive tickets to this event or racetrack?
Yes, I'm going to go with the ARC primarily because it's a 1 day event. I would love to also go to Royal Ascot, but I'd like to hit a couple days of that. And but the ARC is the first Sunday in October. I think for mile and a half horses, it is truly the biggest race on turf in Europe and arguably the world. And therefore, it's going to attract the best horses around the world for that race at a mile and a half on turf. And it's the spectacle of Longchamp. I think I would love to see that track. It's been rebuilt. I don't know, in the last 20 years or remodeled. And supposedly spectacular. The paddock's really a sight to behold. I've talked to Dick Powell about the paddock there, and Ron Flatter and other people that have actually been, and just Paris. You also get a chance if you're going to the Arc, you're going to get some Parisian opportunities for touristy things. So my pick is going to be the Arc.
Vance, what would be your pick?
well, since we all work for the umbrella of Churchill Downs, of course, the Kentucky Derby and Oaks are our two biggest races, but I would go back to the mother races of those two and take in the Derby and Oaks at Epsom in England. I've attempted to go to Epsom on two previous occasions, not for the Derby or the Oaks, but for an ordinary run of the mill card, and in both situations, racing was unexpectedly canceled. The first time due to a sad terrorist attack in London, and then the second time a bug infestation made the track unusable. So I've taken two round trips to England with racing at Epsom on my agenda, only to be spurned twice. I hope a third time would be the charm. I've been to the St. Leger at Doncaster, which is the oldest classic in the world, but I would really love to take in the 2 day experience at Epsom. It's a very unique undulating race course, a true test of stamina and speed, and you just see the best 3-year-olds in England and Ireland compete in those two races, and occasionally throws up a legendary horse in the winner's circle in both races. So, and also I'd have to throw in the Coronation Cup too. For older horses, which is run on the Oaks undercard on the Friday. So 3 great 1.5 mile races, but undoubtedly the Derby is the race I really want to see at some point in the near future.
Well, I'll start with internationally. I have not been to Europe, and this would be a great excuse to go for Royal Ascot. As you mentioned, James, multiple days that you can go to this event, and the history of it, you get the royal family in attendance. I would assume still to this day, even though mostly it was the Queen that was always there, and I think the royal family plans to uphold that tradition going forward. But
They have a royal procession every day, and even if
yeah,
it's not the top
not
royals,
King
there's going to be
Yeah,
Charles.
some
Yeah,
relatives.
yeah. So just
Charles and Camilla have upheld this tradition, and Camilla is a huge racing fan,
okay.
so she's there all 5 days.
Yeah, okay. So I assume they would still be there by the time I finally make it out there. But yeah, that's one of my top. Just I love the fashion. You have the top hats, all of it. It's just aside from what I've grown up knowing here in the U.S., that's the big one that I've always had forefront of my mind is going to Royal Ascot. And then I would say to Everest, going an excuse to go to Australia, Sydney. I would love to go to Everest one day in October. And then the Pegasus World Cup domestically. I've been fortunate to get to go to quite a few racetracks here in the US, but I've never gotten to go to the big party in well, technically Miami, basically Miami. So I'd love one day to go to the Pegasus World Cup. I know we have a lot of celebrity attendees. Tom Brady is known to go to this one, like he does go to the Kentucky Derby. It's kind of, to me, the Kentucky Derby of Florida, even though it's not really a derby. It's totally different kind of racing. But I think it's still just it looks like a pretty fun time from what I've seen pictures and videos of. So it would be one I'd choose to go here in the US.
It's a party. I
Have you
mean,
been?
there's no doubt. There's a lot of people there who are there to party.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe past like my prime of doing that, but still I'd like to check it out. All right, well, now we have gift ideas for each other. So pay up in the next couple weeks.
You better be hitting a lot of pick sixes.
I know, I know. Well, I know, James, you've probably got some superfecta money left over from the Derby. You can treat us. Well, that is all the time we have today for our racing roundtable. We will be back soon. We got the holidays coming up, so our schedule will be a little staggered, but we'll be back soon to talk a lot of major racing coming up to end the year. So check us out on our social channels. We'll see you next time.